When we think about getting sick, we usually think about us, right? Our bodies, maybe our genes, the food we eat. But what if the biggest reasons for why we get sick aren't inside us at all? What if society itself is playing a massive role in our health? Well, today we're going to put on a completely different pair of glasses, a sociological lens, to look at that exact idea. Okay, so this slide really gets to the heart of it. A doctor, quite rightly, is going to look at you and ask, why is this person sick? But a sociologist, they zoom way, way out. They ask a totally different question. What is it about the groups this person belongs to that puts them at a higher risk in the first place? See the difference? We're shifting from a single person to a much bigger pattern. And that right there is the first big mental shift we need to make. We're going from me to we. It's all about starting to see health not just as my personal problem, but as something that affects us as a whole, as a collective. Now, let's be super clear about something. This isn't about replacing doctors or saying medicine is wrong. Not at all. A sociologist just has a completely different job. They're not trying to prescribe you a treatment. Instead, they're like detectives, looking at these huge social patterns to figure out why some groups seem to get sick more often than others. So, what kind of groups are we talking about here? Well, think about the big ones. The categories we're pretty much born into, right? Things like our gender, our social class, our race, our ethnicity. For the most part, we don't get to choose these things. But man, do they have a huge impact on our lives and, as we'll see, on our health. And this brings us to a really key sociological concept called life chances. Now, don't let the name fool you. This has nothing to do with luck or a roll of the dice. Life chances is the idea that your opportunities in life, for a good education, a safe place to live, decent health care, none of that is random. It's all heavily, heavily influenced by those social groups we were just talking about. Okay, that brings us to our second major shift in thinking. This idea of moving away from just biology and towards seeing health as part of a larger social blueprint. So how does this blueprint actually work? It's kind of like a chain reaction. Step 1, it starts with your position in society. Step 2, that position basically determines what you have access to. Things like good food, a safe neighborhood, healthcare. Sociologists call these social goods. And then, step 3, that level of access is what ultimately shapes your quality of life and, you guessed it, your health. So the big takeaway here is pretty stunning when you think about it. From this point of view, your health isn't just about your body or your DNA. It's a direct result of where you stand in a whole network of power relationships. And yeah, I know, that can be a kind of heavy thing to wrap your head around. All right, and this brings us to our final and maybe the most mind-bending shift. It's the idea that what we even call sickness isn't always a straightforward biological fact. Sometimes it's actually a social framework. Yeah, take a look at this quote. The very ways in which we label and treat illnesses can be seen as a form of social control. Whoa. What that's suggesting is that defining something as an illness can be a way to manage people's behavior. Deciding what's sick versus what's healthy isn't always just about science. Sometimes it's about what society considers normal. And that's really what social control means here. When society takes a certain behavior and labels it as a medical problem, a process called medicalization, it's kind of using the authority of medicine to say, this is okay or this is not okay. It's a powerful way to reinforce what's considered appropriate. Now look, this doesn't mean science isn't real or important. Of course it is. But the point is that what we collectively decide to call medical knowledge, what gets researched, what gets funding, what treatments become standard, isn't decided in a vacuum. It's absolutely shaped by our culture, our beliefs, and even by political factors. Okay, so we've gone through these 3 big shifts in thinking. The obvious question is, so what? Why does looking at health through this new lens actually matter in the real world? Well, it matters because it gives us a much, much more complete picture. When you start to think about the group, not just the individual, and about society's blueprint, not just biology, and about how we even define sickness, suddenly you can see the deeper, structural reasons why some people are so much healthier than others. So I want to leave you with a question to think about, a question for you personally. When you look at your own health, things like your stress levels, what you eat, the healthcare you can get, how much of that do you think is really about your biology, and how much is shaped by the society you live in? Just thinking about that, it might just change how you see things.